call to order the I will call to order the Bridgewater Finance Committee at exactly 7:03 p.m. I have a quorum of 5 here, and before we start our meeting, I will read the following disclosure. Pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2020, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency and the March 31st, 2025 extension granted by Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting for the town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible to the public through remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance is permitted. Citizens who wish to tune into the meeting may do so via Zoom. So now that we have called the meeting to order, we will move on to item B, approval of meeting minutes from March 10th, 2025. Josh, I don't recall having seen the minutes. Were they distributed?
Yeah, they were attached as it would have been right after the first page.
Ah, okay. So for members, I would open it up for discussion. If there's any questions, comments, any need for amendments or changes, please signify now. All right. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Bean. Do I hear a second? Seconded by the vice chair. Josh, if you'd be so kind as to take the roll call vote.
MJ,
Aye.
Derek,
Oh, Derek, you're on mute.
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item C on our agenda, public comment. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak before our committee this evening, please signify with your name and your address for the public record so that we may have it on file. Hearing no request to make comment, we will move on to our next item on the agenda. Item D, old business, order OFY25-042, transfer order CPC purchase and restoration of Samuel Edson's Coronersburg. This is an item that we had held over from our previous meeting, and after some good discussion, both with the finance director and members of the committee, we sought to invite two individuals to explain a little bit more about the book before we actually took a vote on it. So tonight we have Miss Gina Guasconi and Dr. Carlton Hunt here to speak to us about the order that is before us. Before any questions are done, I will ask that Dr. Hunt and Ms. Guasconi be allowed to provide as much information as possible and describe the order to us, and provide us any new facts or data that we may not have had previously to our meeting, so that we may be able to make an informed vote, and at which time, when they are concluded, then we will open it up to questions. So with that being said, Dr. Hunt, Ms. Guasconi, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, MJ and Finance Committee, for inviting us to answer questions. The book that the Edson book is from the 1700s. He was a coroner in Bridgewater, and Carlton will explain more about the book itself and the relevance to the town. As far as funding, we have plenty of money to fund it. We'd be taking it from historic preservation, which right now we have a balance of almost $600,000 in it. Plus we have undesignated funds. So we're fine with covering it. We're lucky for the Hanson's farm, and you should be seeing this soon. What we're paying for the conservation restriction for Hanson's is basically covered for a grant. So there'll be a 1% of that will be coming from the CPC budget. So we do have plenty of funds to cover it. We felt the book where Mr. Edson was a prominent citizen in Bridgewater. The book has a lot of it isn't, it's a, Carlton, correct me if I'm wrong, it's some type of a treaty, or I can't think of the exact word for it. But included in the book are lots and lots of pages that you had some attached to the application that are Mr. Edson's handwritten notes on deaths that he covered. And as I said, Edson's are a long time family for Bridgewater. But I'll let Carlton explain more for that.
Thank you. Yes, just because I listened to your meeting, I want to make sure everybody understands that the community preservation funding can only cover 4 different areas: historic preservation, open space acquisition, recreation, and housing. That's the only things that CPA funds can be used for. It's not part of the general fund. It's a small tax adder at 2% after the first $100,000 of appraised cost of the town. So if I have a house that's appraised at 300,000, I only pay 2% on 200,000. That said, our funding is not related to the general fund. It's a special project fund, and we've been a member of the CPA community since 2006. So I'm going to talk a wee bit about the Edsons. The Edson that developed this book, or this coroner's book, which has 2 major parts. The first part is the actual King of England's notification for Massachusetts to become what we are today. So that was in 1726. There are many copies of that have been digitized, etc. So while we're going to preserve the book, which is actually handmade paper, with the bindings needing some support and some cleanup and preservation work done, while we're saving the whole book, we're only going to digitize the handwritten elements of that book. We're allowed to use CPA funds to digitization if it's ancillary to the preservation itself. So this will be a unique book in that we have the digitized handwritten notes of this coroner in hand. That will be important for any future research that people have. I'm anxious to read, if I can, because the writing's a little challenging, but I'm anxious to read about a couple that were noted by the current owners of the book, that indicated it was an investigation of several, I think it was up to 3 Native Americans deaths. So there's some cultural issues that are there. Not to belabor this too much, the Edson family are traced to the original proprietors of Bridgewater. There are 3 Edsons that are at play here. The eldest Edson, Samuel, came into the, I'm going to have to look at my notes here, if I can find it on my computer. Yeah, the oldest came in the mid 1600s, settled in Salem, was there for quite some time. And basically, well, he came in from England in 1639, settled in Salem, and then moved to Bridgewater in 1651. As you may recall, Bridgewater became an official town of Bridgewater, official town in 1656. So the family is one of the most notable founders and citizens of Bridgewater. I think there was a question of the family province. As I said before, he was one of the original proprietors of Bridgewater in 1656, and he did a lot of work, and they lived in West Bridgewater. What was then Bridgewater became West Bridgewater, but that's where he lived. The Samuel Edson I is buried in the West Bridgewater Historic Cemetery. He developed sawmills and manufacturing. He had a number of children. The second Samuel Edson, the second, was born in around 1645-ish. I didn't find much records on him, but the coroner, Samuel Edson III, is the grandson of the original immigrant into Bridgewater. He was born in 1690 here in Bridgewater, became a lawyer and a coroner. And one of the things that he's noted for is that he gave If you know Bridgewater on Main Street heading towards West Bridgewater, right before the border, there is a small cemetery called the Trinitarian or Trinity Cemetery.
Trinity Church.
Trinity Church Cemetery. That was the original church, one of the original churches in Bridgewater. But Samuel Edson III gave that land for the church and eventually the cemetery. And he is actually buried in that cemetery now. So from a cultural perspective, from a historic perspective, the book represents Bridgewater in back in the 1700s. I think it's as the Historic Commission noted, it has a significant cultural aspect. That's one of the requirements or the things that the CPA notes when they say historic preservation. If it has cultural value that's worth preserving, its age alone is plus 250 years old. And it basically recorded what he did as a coroner. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
And just to clarify the price, the book itself is $5,500. There are a balance of $7,500 to total. The $13,000 that we're looking to award is for the preservation of the book.
And I will say one more thing, because some of you may or may not be fully aware of CPA. The CPC can only make a recommendation to the town council for the expenditure of CPA funds. If you vote to recommend it, that's fine, but the town council can only do one of three things. One, they can deny it totally. They can modify it slightly, change the scope of it, so not fully fund it, or they can accept it in full. And that's what the town council's charge is through the Community Preservation Act. I think that's
Great.
it.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt, and thank you, Ms. Gosconi. So I do have an additional question. Given that the book itself is only principally $5,500, the actual cost of digitization and archival work is the $7,500. Has that already gone out to? Has that already been bid or given a prospective estimate?
I carried the book up to the NEDCC. It's the Premier Preservation Society organization. It's up in Andover, I believe. I took the book up there. They did a thorough evaluation of it. I don't know if that was included in your packet, but we have a very thorough, detailed packet of condition of the book and exactly how they would preserve it. And there are costs associated with how they're going to preserve it, smooth the pages, that kind of thing. So we have a proposal from them. They currently hold the book at no cost to the town. I think we're running up a deadline fairly soon, but they hold the book and it has been evaluated by the premier preservationists of books here in New England. And that's the cost.
MJ, I didn't include, if I remember back right, I didn't include the actual quote for the preservation digitization, but if you need that, if you think it's helpful, we can send it off to you.
I think at this point, now that we've gotten this summarization, this information, I think this is pretty helpful. I will note, as a history major myself, when items like this come along, fellow members, these are unicorns as it is when it comes to local histories. These are extremely important for the preservation of the legacy of a municipality and those who have lived here and who made this town home. So for me, seeing this, just so folks understand, this is kind of a unique treasure that we have before us that is a really unique opportunity for preservation purposes. But I will also ask members if they have any other questions, they may ask them now at this time.
I do have a couple of questions, and thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the names.
Oh, it's Miss Gosconi.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much both for the presentation. So I guess from, Dr. Hunt, you mentioned that the book or the finding, the book has some significant cultural value. Can you maybe elaborate, like the word significant cultural value? What does that mean? From a, from a preservation standpoint, and then the other thought that I have, um, and I'm just gonna ask the question straight out. Was he a slave owner?
I
And the
cannot
reason
answer
I
the
ask the
latter.
question,
I cannot answer that question.
and
I don't know of that. The book was referred to us by an Edson, um, great grandson who grew up here in Bridgewater. And I don't know any evidence or otherwise, so I can't answer that at all. Um, in terms of his holdings, I just don't know.
yeah, and the reason I asked the question, and thank you so much for letting me know. I'm not a historian by no means. And certainly, um, this is a sensitive um topic and a sensitive discussion for someone like me.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how others might feel, but certainly, if there's any glorification, if you will, of someone who may have owned slaves, right? Um, to me, that's not something that, and it's not even about the money, right? To me, that's not something that, that I particularly would want to support. Only because I'm looking at some records. I don't know how factual it is. I just want to be very honest. This is all internet stuff. Um, you know, it does highlight, and maybe this is the wrong person. I don't know. But there's a section um where it says um, you know, this individual or individual in the family did own slaves. At least one black woman, at least one black man. And again, I don't know how truthful or factual this information is. And I realize that there's a deadline, and the department that you guys represent, I would assume has a fiduciary responsibility to kind of dig deeper into these things. So that way, you know, members of the town is getting a very clear picture of who the individual or individuals might be, so that people can make more informed decisions. That's my only drawback given what I've been seeing. It's not even about the money. It's more so for me about not wanting to glorify um any individual who may have contributed to the challenges that persons of color has experienced in this country. Um, so just putting it out there.
I can tell you, I deeply appreciate your thinking and your thoughts and your concerns. Um, as a grandfather to two young men that trace their heritage not only to the Native Americans that were here in the 1600s, but to Africa, that's important to me. But what I think from a cultural perspective, this is basically writing in time about the overall culture. As I said, there were Native Americans mentioned as having been investigated about their deaths. We don't know what actually occurred there. I don't know who else he investigated in terms of deaths, but a coroner is typically looking at someone who died unexpectedly, that kind of thing. So I cannot answer the question. I don't know the family history in terms of whether or not they did own slaves or not. Recalling that this was in the 1700s, there could be a chance. I just don't know. But I deeply appreciate what your concern is.
Mhm.
If we get the
I,
book scanned, we might find out some things.
Thank you.
I agree
Yeah.
too that
And
I hear what you're saying about slavery. I wish it never happened. It was our history. Um, I think though, and as I said, I understand completely what you're saying. But I think the history of the book, the history, as Carlton said, the Samuel Edson III, as a coroner, was investigating deaths, race of the people that died, I don't know. But I think there's significance to the town and the history to the town. And as much as, like I said, I don't agree with slavery at all, but I also look at it as it was our history, good or bad, which was probably bad. But I think the aspect of the book, I don't want to say outweighs, because I think the slavery issue is very important. And that's it. But I do understand completely what you're
I
saying.
want to, can I add one more thing? I
Sure.
don't think we're glorifying his name. We are
Right.
producing a document that's history, and it's important to history. It's not necessarily glorifying what he did or anything of that nature. It's basically the book and a record of history. That's how I kind of view this.
That was going to be my question. I mean, I read the pages that came over, and obviously we don't know everything else that's in there. But the intention of this is not to glorify the person or to put anything, about slavery in a positive light or anything else. It's to keep the information that's in the book preserved for the future. That's really and it's not about the person that wrote the book, correct? It's about the material that's within it.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I really appreciate your comments and concerns about it. As a person who understands the various issues of history from my own studies myself, there may be a measure of restorative justice that could be a part of this at some point, an acknowledgement that may have been something that may have been dealt with in Mr. Edson's books as it relates to his family as well. If there was ownership, it should be acknowledged, and that particular period of time, as a result, should be seen through the lens of these were times where folks were not afforded the equality that they do have today, and that the justice that needs to be restored is the fact that their dignity should be respected. Even these many years later, I recognize that slavery was a terrible institution. It's a violation of human rights. It's a violation of human dignity. If we have any information on a person whose past may have involved that, it needs to be known, not only for the record, but also for the understanding of that period of time. But in doing so, we need to acknowledge the fact that we need to do better as a society to remember the fact that there were hundreds of thousands of individuals taken from their homelands, thousands of miles away. And if there were individuals in America that owned them, they should be honored in their memory. And those individuals should be seen as fellow humans and dignified in that regard. There should be a level of restorative justice and acknowledgement. If Mr. Edson did own slaves, that should be acknowledged. His material, yes, that is a great thing that we have, is how was, forensic science done at this period of time. But if he did own slaves, there needs to be an acknowledgement of that and a respect to those who unfortunately were in the bonds of slavery at the time. And I certainly agree with you, Mr. Knoll. That is something that should be acknowledged, and there should be at least a small modicum of note to that, so that in that regard, his individuals who were possessions, which I find a horrible phrase to use, are acknowledged as fellow human beings, and they should have been afforded that respect then, and they should be afforded that respect now.
I appreciate the thought, everyone. And I guess the last question I have, if it's okay, Chairwoman.
Sure.
We're purchasing this from the family, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm framing that question the wrong way. Are there any capital gains to the family beyond this point?
No, we're not purchasing it from the family. We're purchasing it from a man, I believe he's in New Hampshire, that has acquired the book from a bookstore, that very prominent bookstore, I believe in Connecticut maybe, that has since closed. So we can't trace all the way back, but it's not coming from the family itself.
Okay,
It's coming from someone who acquired the book from another bookstore.
thank
It
you,
was
everyone.
it was part of an estate that was sold.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Do you have a question, Mr. Vice Chair? Oh, you're on mute again, Derek.
My apology. I sometimes fumble with that. As a member of the public, and recognizing what we have discussed, I'd like to talk a little bit about the practical applications of the ownership of the book. Specifically, I'd like to know how it is going to be made available to the public for those who do wish to take a look, and where do you see what kind of benefit to the community would we have in purchasing and restoring the material? Is this something that can be used for genealogy? Is it something that's going to be used for presentations, discussions, general research? What are some of your ideas on it?
I can quickly say all of the above.
I was just gonna say all of the above, and it will be
The-
housed in
As was,
the
as was written in
library.
as was written in the historical commission letter, the important thing is digitization in this case. That becomes it's a public document. The digital file will be provided to the town's public library. The intent is to have the restored book in the public library historic room, which is a climate controlled room, very nicely done. The town's archivist at the library has taken a look at it. It's very excited to have received it. It first came and we gave that to them to hold until I could take it up for the preservationists to look at it. So it will be fully publicly available. One of the things that can happen is the book can be displayed in one of the cases in the lower part of the library. And the digitized files will be available for people to do their research as they want. Like I said, it's the handwriting and the word spelling, that kind of thing is a bit of a challenge. One of the things that they will do in the preservation, if this goes forward, is they will enhance the contrast between the written word and the page, so you get better see things. So absolutely, this is a public document. When we purchase it, it becomes a public document. It's in the public library and it's available for research and study.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Thank you, Ms. Gosconi. And thank you, Vice Chair, for that question. Oh, did you have another thing to add, Carlton?
No, I was doing a thumbs up.
Oh.
This is muted.
Did anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Is anybody offering a motion?
Given everything that's been said, I'm satisfied with the investigative part of it. I'm satisfied with the intention, and the intent of, those that are historians, that are looking to dig deeper into it to discover, information that this content may hold. That being said, I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, I hear a motion from Noel and a second by Lee. Josh, you'd be so kind of take the roll call vote, please.
MJ,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All righty, thank you, everyone. Now moving on to item E. We don't have any new business per se, so we don't really have anything on the agenda for tonight for new business. We look forward to any items that come from the council in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank you and the finance committee for having Carlton and I in to answer questions. I think they were great questions. Glad we clarified things for you and explained things, but I do appreciate us being called in.
And we
I just wanna-
appreciate you. We appreciate you guys coming in tonight because it, you know, our work isn't necessarily the most elegant or most glamorous, so it really helps to get the more personal touch from our fellow colleagues on committees and boards. And as you were saying, Carlton.
Yeah, heads up, we are potentially going to receive a number of applications for recreation. Gina spoke about the open space conservation that's coming forward. We just received the application today. So there may be a number of things coming before you. Please do not hesitate to ask us
Correct.
to come in and explain what we're doing. We oftentimes, it just goes through the process. This is the first time I think I've come before the finance committee in 5 or 6 years that I've been a CPC
too.
member. And I think it's really important. And I just wanted to say thank you for your deep concern.
And I thank you both for accepting the invite to come to our meetings. Rest assured, as more things come up to our committee, I am going to be asking that we reach out to those with the knowledge and the understanding and backgrounds to give us the answers and information that we need as we search through these things. We are, by charter, an advice and consent arm of the town government, so we need to be able to provide advice and give consent when able to do so. So you two helping us out tonight is a very big, important thing, at least in my eyes. So rest assured, we will be inviting you back more.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so let's move on to item F, additional items for discussion. I do not have anything this evening. Did anybody have anything they wanted to offer up? No? Alrighty, so we will now move on to our, I suppose it's probably the most favorite part of everyone's meeting schedule, adjournment of the meeting. I would entertain a motion.
A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn made by Mr. Bean.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
I
Second.
second.
I'll call it a tie. It's a tie.
We duked it out
Nicole
for
and-
a second.
Haley got me.
All right, so we'll give it to Mrs. Basowitz. So Josh, you can take the roll call vote, please.
MJ,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
Rig,
Another thing.
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Haley.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned.
All
Thank you,
righty, we will
everyone.
see you at the
Take
next
care.
meeting, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good
Bye.
night, everyone.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you,
Bye,
Carlton.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.